Yeah, this may be the most apt starting frame ever. Like, I can't stress how much that is true.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Hey, you can see my face tonight.
Woo.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So, well,
you're Shadow Man tonight. Look at you.
Yeah,
you're Shadow Man.
Travis, Brother Bob with you. And yeah, I mean, we just did a show a couple days ago, but AEW, we knew it was going the night before when we talked about it on the show. We knew that the upfronts were coming. The official announcement is out. We actually learned quite a bit. So we thought we were going to do just a little short one and break down kind of what was released from the upfronts and a little bit about what's coming out of the front office of AEW now that it's official. But unfortunately, the interwebs being full of awfulness, there's been this argument since the announcement about how AEW is WCW 2.0. And it seems like there's so much hate and so much expectation for this to fail. I felt like we should kind of break some things down and dispel some myths because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, the other thing, I mean, there are those who disagree with that statement, but a lot of them are saying that it's TNA 2.0. So in both respects, it would be an incorrect statement to make. AEW is unlike anything we've seen as far as a new pro wrestling company starting out, ever. So this is a brand new ground, and we'll discuss, why that is.
Correct. So let's start with the upfront meetings and the information that we got, because that plays directly into why AEW is not, in fact, WCW, TNA, or any other promotion we've seen before. And Bob, did you read the 2-page release, the memo that was released by Turner the day of the upfronts? Because we got a ton of, there was surprisingly a ton of information. If you are willing to read that slowly and dissect it, we got a lot of info in that memo.
Sure did. I mean, everything from information about the streaming service, Bleacher Report online, and things about, that specifically wording on how they worded that it's a partnership rather than, than Turner announcing that I have new programming. This announcement was of a partnership with AEW, which when you use words like partnership usually means that the company involved is going to be more involved with the product than if they were just broadcasting it. It's a completely different animal at that point.
So let me start there. There is this rumor going around and about the TV deal, and that this is not, the AEW is not being paid for this TV deal. Okay, this rumor was started by a reporter, and even the reporter has come out and said, hey, this is what I've heard, but if Dave Meltzer says it's untrue, trust him because I'm not sure. Yep. Meltzer has said categorically in numerous interviews, this is not true. If it was a time buy, the contract would have been, and this just makes sense, guys, a time buy, the contract would have been done. All you do is go in and cut a check and pick your time slots. It wouldn't be in prime time. It wouldn't have been presented at the upfront at all, because the reason that Turner presents something at the upfront is to give advertisers a chance to buy ad time on that show. They're pitching that show to the advertisers. If AEW was doing a time buy, they wouldn't do that.
Nope.
Okay? Like, that would be AEW's responsibility to go out and find their own advertisers.
With a time buy, you are looking at something more akin to what Ring of Honor currently has than what AEW has.
It would be closer to that. The difference being is Ring of Honor is owned by the parent company that owns the TV stations.
Yep.
So they don't have to actually buy the time. They just kind of allocate it on their affiliates.
Exactly.
And that's why you get Ring of Honor. That's why Ring of Honor in some cities is on it Friday at 11:30. In other cities it's on it Sunday at 2 a.m.
In some cities it's on twice in the same week because, there's two affiliates within that, within that city. So
that's our case.
Yep.
We get 2 shows a week. It's same show, but we get Ring of Honor the opportunity to watch it twice. It's on abysmal time slots.
Yep.
That's not the case though. Okay. We know now that this is going to be a 2-hour weekly show. Indications are strongly that it's going to be live. I believe the release doesn't specify live, but the interviews that Cody and Brandy and the executives have given following it, including I heard an interview with Jericho earlier today on Busted Open, they're all saying live.
Yep.
When Jericho specifically said in his interview with Bully Ray, when talking about the backstage workings and how he and the Bucks and Cody and everybody gets along and how the creative direction's going to go, there hasn't been any bumps yet. Obviously, they expect a few bumps and disagreements because people are going to want to do different things, but they all get along really well, so they don't think it's going to be a knockdown drag out. But Jericho repeatedly used the word when we get to live TV. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's going to be live, guys. Like, this is one of those, and I know there are a lot of people. It was going on this week on the message boards, the Facebook groups, and everything. They were, the contract's not done after the upfronts leaked. Okay, yeah, it wasn't technically official, but this was. These were reputable sources reporting that it was going to be released at the Turner Upfront. And by reputable sources, I mean like CBS Sports and ESPN and Forbes. And it was all but official. And people were like, well, they don't have a TV deal. Well, of course. Yeah, no, they have a TV deal. The contract's signed. They just haven't announced it yet. Okay. And nope, they don't have a TV deal. All right. You're hating. I get it. You're trolling. I'm not going to waste my time with you. Let's move on. But we need to dispel that because even on Observer Radio yesterday with Brian Alvarez, he had, and I'm not sure, I don't listen to it a ton. I listen to it on and off sporadically. The co-host he had on specifically said that this was a time buy again. And that's on Wrestling Observer Radio. That's a Meltzer product. And they're still perpetuating this rumor that AEW is doing a time buy. And Alvarez shut him down, kudos to him, and said, no, it's not, and had to explain it. He's like, well, that's what's being reported. And he's like, no, that was an erroneous report. Like, it was an incorrect report. And the reporter even went back and said, this is what I heard, but this may not be true, and everybody's kind of poo-pooing it, so don't believe it. And basically retracted the story. And it's still out there because there's so many haters. That's not the case, guys. We don't know. The thing is we don't know what the terms of the TV deal is because AEW is a private company. AEW does not have to release its financials like WWE does. Yep. So we're not going to know if they're making or losing money. It's just going to be pure speculation. I mean, you'll be able to tell very quickly if they're going to small arenas. Like I have to assume they're going to hit small, 8 to 12,000 seat arenas to start the TVs, right? You don't want to book anything too big, but you don't want to go too small either. And I would assume that's where they're going to start because they want this to look legit. Maybe they go smaller. Maybe they start in 6,000 to 8,000 seat venues just so they can sell out. And that may be a good idea too. But if they're selling out,
so we think their first show is going to be at Mall of America.
Oh, I would wager that it would be anywhere but Mall of America.
Yeah.
If you colored me a betting guy, I would be willing to bet that it's going to be anywhere but Mall of America. So
though CM Punk showing up in Mall of America during the main event would be pretty entertaining.
If they did it as a goof, and I've said kind of, I've said kind of over and over again, if everything in the ring was very serious, but they did do it at Mall of America and they recreated that scene with another prominent wrestler as a goof, but everything else was taken seriously. You know what? I think a lot of people would find that really funny and ironic.
Yeah.
But it would absolutely be key. Like, that would have to be the entire ha-ha for the show, is the irony that they're doing it. And then they would have to they would have to come out absolutely guns a-blazing, and you would have to get like one of the best shows you've seen in the last, probably 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, period. Because if you go with that, that's why, obviously it's not going to happen, but there's definitely a potential for a ha-ha moment there.
Yep.
But I don't think you do that. And I don't think you ruin the momentum you have just to have one ha-ha throwaway moment and stick your thumb in everybody's eye.
Plus, you got to expect that wherever they do the first show, even if they do a bigger venue, they're going to sell that first show out. I mean, we've seen how quick All In sold out. We've seen how quick Double or Nothing sold out, both because they're like first time things. Even Ring of Honor recently selling out at G1 Supercard in Madison Square Garden. So I would assume that even if they do a little bit larger venue, they're going to sell out their first TV, taping or live show, whichever it actually ends up being. Though it does sound like live, so we'll see what happens.
So the first page of the AEW TNT up front is all the basic gaga, right? It's them hyping the product and justifying why they're putting this on the air, and pitching it to those ad buyers. And it's very well done, but there's not a ton of info in the first page. There's one little part where it says later this year, Warner Media will provide exclusive multi-platform access for fans to watch AEW events airing live weekly matches on TNT in prime time, including as well as streaming through the Warner Media's BR Live app and on pay-per-view. So that was kind of like the highlight. Let's look at a couple of things here, okay? That tells you that they're really investing in this product. This isn't just a throwaway thing. And they are pitching this as TNT and Turner are back in the wrestling business and very happy to be.
Yep.
So that's very exciting. And it's saying multi-platform. So you're going to get a streaming service. It is a little worrisome, the BR app. I have not heard good reviews.
Yeah, it does sound like that there's a lot of issue as far as connectability and sustained video during live broadcasts, things of that nature.
Absolutely.
And that's super worrisome because as we've seen with WWE Network and Honor Club and things of that nature, a lot of people, like when you're doing a pay-per-view, a lot of people tuning in all at one time are going to shut those servers down if you don't have enough bandwidth available and enough server space. So
positive, negative, I want to kind of balance these out because that is a negative. There has been some criticisms. The I guess not necessarily a positive, but a bright spot to kind of piggyback on that issue is the BR app hasn't had a lot of things on it.
Yeah.
It hasn't been like, this is really kind of the rollout of the content for Bleacher Report in terms of what the next stage of where they're taking that website and this app. They haven't had a lot of content. They have a few months to get their house in order. Okay. Now, knowing that there's bad reviews of that app out there, knowing that they basically had to give away that Mickelson Tiger Woods golf shootout thing for free. They had to refund everybody because they had such a bad time with it and basically free evented it. You have to assume that this is something that TNT and Turner have been working on since that happened.
You'd hope so.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would assume, because it is so important in this day and age to have in this market, especially the pro wrestling market, to have a working, highly functional app so people can get your content online on your phone, et cetera, okay? You have to have it, and you have to have it in short order. I've said that several times in the several podcasts leading up to this point. They have to have a solid online presence in terms of an app, because everybody else has it. Okay. Absolutely. They've yet to run a show. They are the number 2 wrestling company in the country. I firmly believe that. This TV deal puts them ahead of Ring of Honor. It puts them ahead of Impact. It is the number 2 company now.
Yep.
Without even running a show, guys, they're number 2. It's just, you can't. If
not number 2 T-shirt company, number 2 wrestling company.
They are the number 2 wrestling company purely off this TV deal.
Yep.
Now, again, could it flop? Any business can fail.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's kind of, we'll talk about that as after. I want to get through this part, and then we'll get into that. I want to get through the deal first. But I mean, just by having primetime major network television, they're the number 2 company. Get used to it. Accept it. Okay, so that was kind of interesting. Then you had some more gaga on that first page, but you get into the second page, and this is where I get excited. Okay, this is where I start seeing like rainbows and sunshine and the end of a miserable wrestling experience, because I won't have to watch WWE anymore, like, at all. Like, if this is presented, if AEW is what they are presenting it to be, I will watch Royal Rumble. I'll watch Mania, because the Royal Rumble and their Mania, and that's probably about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I already don't care, and I'm getting an alternative. So let's talk a little bit more about what they said. Focused on producing fast-paced, high-impact competitions, AEW offers fans less scripted, soapy drama, and more athleticism and real sports analytics, bringing a legitimacy to wrestling that it has not previously had. Wrestlers will also be given more freedom to explore their characters and highlight their athletic abilities. All right, let's stop there for a minute, because there's a bit more, but that's a lot to take in. All right, just that alone, that, like, you have to break that down, because you just got a ton of information.
Yep. Right
there. This is everything that's been rumored and kind of Tony Khan has said and hinted at, and some of the guys have said, and you've heard from Cody, and it's going to be, it's going to be athletics. It's going to be, you've heard Tony Khan talk about win-loss. Real sports analytics, athleticism, less soapy drama, non-scripted promos.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
everything that the longtime wrestling fan loved about, well, basically everything until, the early 2000s.
Yeah, and everything that fans have loved recently and fans have discovered about, like, New Japan and Ring of Honor in the past few years.
Impact.
Impact,
great example. Because Impact's promos, when they're just doing straight promos, really high quality.
Yep.
A lot of those guys had a really, really high quality promo. Let's read a little bit deeper into that paragraph. Introducing statistics to wrestling for the first time ever, which is a little misleading, because wrestling has used some statistics very loosely.
Yeah.
At, X amount of championships.
Looking back, recently I've pulled out some books I have sitting around the house, and I have a souvenir program from TNA Wrestling, which has a couple pages in it that specifically break down title reigns and top contenders for the championships based on their recent win-loss record. I have a WCW book produced by one of the video game strategy guide companies from back in the day, and I think that came out in like 2000, 2001-ish. And that has a breakdown of wrestlers in their careers. It talks about, like, their strengths and weaknesses. It talks about their win-loss records, their title wins. So there are some statistics that have existed and been released to fans in the guise of this is a sport prior to. Here, though, it does sound like they are looking to take that to the next level.
Well, that's every indication, because, it says first time ever. Obviously, we know about championship reigns, Goldberg's win streak, things like that, but they're taking it to truly the next level, according to this. AEW will raise the stakes for its matches and deepen fan engagement by tracking each competitor's wins and losses as the wrestler pursues championships, making the championships matter.
Yep.
Titles are going to matter.
So we won't be seeing their world title not on TV for, 9 months out of the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Analyzing their moves. They're going to use analytics to analyze their moves. I'm willing to bet what we're going to see is you're going to see on replays. In your replays, you're going to see kind of like, if somebody does a big suplex, there's going to be like the animated line that goes with it, and it'll show the point of impact and explain all of that. And you're going to get, it's going to look way more, it's going to, instead of that WWE thing where it's that slow-mo impact and it speeds right up. At the end, you're going to see, like, it's going to stop in the middle and there's going to be a quick 5-second breakdown, and then the move will finish, right? And it'll be screen in screen. That's what I'm envisioning. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I see like a way more like an NBA, NFL, NHL like presentation in terms of the replays. UFC, boxing. That's what I'm expecting out of this. That's what that looks like in my mind when I read this. Okay. Tracking the competitors' wins and losses as the wrestler pursues championships, analyzing their moves, assessing damage to their opponents, and providing insights into their winning streaks. No more 50-50 booking, guys.
What I want to see.
No more 50-50 booking.
What I want to see, and I don't remember if it was TNA who did this back in the day, or they actually tried pushing the contender ladder. Basically, they'd have a graphic with who the top 10 contenders are and where they're ranking within the company, and then a big winner, big loss will move somebody up or down that ladder.
Very smart.
I would love to see something like that, because you could have a guy who's had a bunch of losses and we're doing really badly, and you can see him get a couple wins and move up a little bit, and then maybe face the top guy on that ladder and get a win, and then make a substantial change. I think that would be amazing to kind of take into effect. All right, well, you beat somebody and as an underdog, and so that has more weight than you beating somebody who's got a similar win-loss record to you. And you could see that change. You could track that online. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, and really that's what happens in the UFC. And boxing, you have the number 1 ranked contender, number 2 ranked contender, moves up and down, depending on wins and losses, and that can be determined. You can put together a fictional, a fictional committee, like the championship committee. It doesn't have to be real. Just put it together. They used to use championship committees all the time as a plot device. Why not go back to that?
Yep.
You have the championship committee rank everybody every week, and then so and so's on a 4-match win streak, they've moved up 2 spots, they have to have a match, they're number 7, they're going to have a big match with the number 4 contender. This could totally shake up the rankings, and you instantly have a storyline for the reason that this match is going on. It's just not some garbage in the ring.
Yep. And if they need a championship committee, we are able to be hired. So we're just putting that out there, AEW.
Yeah. Yep. I'm all about that. You need a little championship committee. I can help. I can help from home. You never even have to see me.
Exactly.
So
we have the technology.
There were also, again, a lot of interviews in the last 24 hours with Cody and Brandy, and the Jericho interview on Busted Open. Just reinforcing all this.
Yeah.
It's going to be sports, and like I said, what I'm envisioning in my head is a cross between pro wrestling and the UFC. You're going to get a UFC style presentation with maybe some NFL presentation. Bob, you and I were talking about how cool would it be, in the middle of the show, if you need to fill a segment, just a quick 8 to 10 minute segment, you go to your expert panel and you have like a media guy, and you kind of met throughout Shivani or Mike Tanay or somebody that's a media guy, right? Doesn't matter. Doesn't even have to be like related to, and I know people are, WCW, we'll get there. All right. Like we're just throwing out names that are kind of out there. It doesn't have to be those guys. It could be somebody that's currently under a deal with AEW, but like a host media guy. Okay. And then you have 2 or 3 wrestlers of different types. Like you have a heel and a face, maybe a big guy, maybe a cruiserweight, one of the heel big guy, a face like heavyweight, and then you have like a face cruiserweight, and then maybe your analyst guy, like a Dave Meltzer type guy, not without it being Dave Meltzer. And you have like a 4 or 5 man panel, and they do 10 minutes, kind of like a halftime, like with an NBA show, where they break down what's going on, they break down actual action in the ring. It's not just filler. Break down who's doing what, and what that also does. And Cornette's made this point a lot. He started watching Raw and SmackDown again last month or whatever for a few shows, just so he could talk about it, like how bad is it. He heard how bad it was, and one of the things he brought up is how inaccessible the product is to a new fan, because if you're new, you have no idea. When you come into Raw, you have no idea who these people are or what they're doing, because the announcers don't tell you, and there's no graphics that tell you.
And I mean, a really good example of that is so Bray Wyatt cuts his promo this last week and has his mask debut, and it's all kind of supposed to be spooky and crazy or whatever. And
Wyatt
and the follow-up to that was, you had Renee and Corey kind of looking a bit spooked, and then the words that come out of Michael Cole's mouth are, and on to the next segment. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? Like, no actual commentary on what we just seen to let people know that this isn't normal. If you just tuned into this, we haven't seen this before. This is scary. This is weird. This is strange. This is whatever. There was no commentary given to it. It was just like, okay, there was that, and on to the next thing. And that doesn't help anybody who's new to the product.
No, not at all. Like even after like me taking, I haven't been actively following for a couple months now, and coming back in, I know all the players, but I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm like, why is Bobby Lashley and Elias helping Shane McMahon? Nobody said anything. Nobody explained it. Like, and
everybody watching the show all the time were wondering the same thing. So don't
that's fair then. All right, so I don't feel as bad.
Yeah,
but that's an indication. So, look, like this is going to be. And I don't want WWE to fail. I want WWE to be better. I want to be able to watch it again.
Yeah.
There's a ton. We've railed on the amount of talent WWE has right now. It has more talent assembled in one place than any other wrestling company has ever assembled in history. Yep. It's absurd. And they do nothing with it. So, yeah, we're angry.
Yep.
I'm angry. I don't want to watch it anymore.
I'm bored.
Do I want to watch it? Yeah, I want it to be good. I want it to be at least good enough to catch my interest again.
Yeah. See, the thing is that for a lot of people, the reason I think there's so much anger towards WWE and why there's so many people who won't give up on it, is because there's so many people who really, really have come to care about the actual wrestlers involved in that company. And, I love AJ Styles. I love Finn Balor. Like, I'm a big Becky fan. I want to see them successful. I want to see them do good. And with a company that can't write compelling stories and can't keep people involved and lose them within the roster. Roster members just completely lose them and have them miss TV for multiple weeks at a time. Those kind of problems. I don't want to watch them at that point. I don't want to see like guys I like Kevin Owens flounder or like Sami Zayn flounder. I want to see those guys be successful, and they're not in a company that is going to allow them to do so.
Yeah, it's really painful because you develop, a love or a hate for guys, and then that's the thing, man. Like I think the most infuriating thing is seeing so much talent on this roster flounder.
Yeah.
And that's it. That is what stings the most, because these guys are talented. You've seen it elsewhere, especially like the hardcore fan. They followed guys' careers. Like, look at what they're doing to Ricochet. Look at kind of the NXT roster and the guys that come up from the NXT roster, and they're capable of so much more.
Look at poor EC3.
EC3, the Viking whatever. Like, War Machine, man, and seeing them live, like having been able to see them live in Ring of Honor.
Yep.
Their live matches are insanely good. Like, they're just so good. And they're so talented. And now they're just in WWE gimmick tag team hell.
Yep.
And it's just a shame because those two guys work so hard, and are just good at what they do. I don't know, man. It's painful. So, I mean, it's exciting that we're getting WWE is going to have competition.
Yep.
And there's a difference between having competition. This is another argument that people seem to not understand. There's a difference between having competition and competing against each other.
Yep.
AEW and WWE provide competition, but AEW, at least from all appearances, is not going to compete with WWE. They're not trying to be like WWE, other than the fact that it's wrestling, sort of. Like, WWE is sports entertainment. They're not going to be sports entertainment. Everything that is coming out of AEW is the exact opposite of sports entertainment. Yeah. It's not going to be that. Okay? They're not going to try and do that. They're not going to go head to head against WWE at the same time on the same night. Okay? Yes, they're loosely competing for fans. Absolutely. You can't deny that, but there's a difference between offering an alternative, and that's the word that we need to be using. They're not competition, they're an alternative.
Exactly.
Yes, that is competing on a level, but it's not competing on the level that WCW or TNA did. Okay?
Yeah, to put it into perspective in a retail environment, you can have two clothing stores that sell a lot of the same brands. One of them that sells stuff in the mall, and one of them that sells things in like a department store. And while they are competition, they're not competing directly with each other. They're not, in comparison to if somebody opened up a store right next to another store and sold the same thing. It's similar to that. I mean, they're going to draw in the same people who are looking for the same kind of things. They're looking for wrestling. But because of the fact that they're not on the same night, they're not on the same network, they're not looking to take viewers away from WWE, but give an alternative to WWE.
Yeah,
and that's the key.
Let's use a kind of a simple analogy. Use a food analogy. They're both food, but WWE is McDonald's, and I don't want to blow it out of proportion. Say like AEW is like a fancy, but AEW is if AEW is McDonald's or WWE's McDonald's, AEW's Arby's. You don't go to Arby's for burgers. Yep. You go to Arby's for roast beef sandwiches. It's fast food, but it's different.
Yeah.
They're not directly competing other than the fact of you need to decide where you're going to go get your food. What kind of food do you want? Do you want a burger or do you want a roast beef sandwich?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, there is a level of competition, but don't blow this out of proportion and make this is not the next coming of the Monday Night War. They're not going to go head to head. They're not going to be competing for a rating on the same night. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And I mean, as exciting as the idea of the Monday Night War is, I think that if WCW would have, instead of going on to Monday nights and doing Monday Nitro, would have started and done a Tuesday night show, I think, and hit it big like they did with the NWO, all the same things kind of happening, but not had to share ratings with WWE. I don't think they would have dropped ratings as early as they did. I don't think, that obviously they wouldn't have been that opportunity for the Mankind Championship win to, completely destroy them in the ratings, because they would have been on a different night. Just the concept of going head to head, you're putting a lot more risk there, and I think long term is a poor idea. I mean, TNA found out that.
Yeah, TNA learned the hard way. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that's the other part I feel like we have to address, because this misconception that AEW is TNA or 2.0 or WCW 2.0. Okay. And I sigh that sigh that only and these are people that are in like wrestling groups. This isn't just the casual fan. Like, I don't consider, if you take the time to seek out a wrestling group on like Facebook and actively participate in it, you're not really a casual fan.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're involved. You're a hardcore fan. Maybe not super hardcore, but you may not be listening to like a ton of podcasts, and you may not be, reading the Observer or anything like that, but you're following along and talking to people on the internet about what you like and don't like about wrestling.
Yep.
You're a fairly invested fan. And the amount of misinformation and the amount of ignorance, and I don't know if it's intentional ignorance or they just don't know, or they don't bother to actually go any further than what they read in a clickbait headline. But it is stunning, the amount of ignorance out there, and the amount of hate, and the amount of misinformation and the misperception of what this is and what WCW was towards the end, and the reason it failed. Okay, let's start with the TV deal, because we talked about that. Okay, AEW is its own company. It is owned by by technically Tony Khan's dad, I guess, but Tony's the president and CEO. Okay, yeah. Tony's the owner. Let's just say Tony's the man. Okay. He is partnered with his company, AEW has partnered with Turner Broadcasting, Turner Sports, to put the show on TNT. WCW was owned by Turner, which was in turn owned by AOL Time Warner.
Yeah. Which, okay. I mean, depending on where during its history you look at it, but yes.
Right. I mean,
it was always owned by the Turner programming, and then when the AOL Time Warner merger went through, then it was owned by AOL Time. So I mean, there were a couple mergers during their existence, but
right.
Yeah.
So the short, like kind of the short of it was, Crockett sold it to Turner.
Yep.
And it became WCW proper. Turner's WCW. Turner owned obviously CNN and TBS and TNT, and then Turner sold to. I'm going to screw this one up, Bob. He sold the Viacom, right?
Yeah, there was the Viacom. I think it was a Viacom merger, and then a Time Warner and then AOL merger.
Viacom was merged with AOL Time Warner.
Yeah.
So there was a merger on top of a merger, okay? And even after the first merger, Ted Turner essentially lost control of WCW. He had an office at CNN Tower, but basically he had no power in the company at all. Mm-hmm. He was just a figurehead. He had been bought out, and this is now a wrestling product that is in the hands of a corporation.
Yep.
Okay. If you want to see something closer to that, go look at Ring of Honor, because and even that is not necessarily comparable, because Sinclair is not nearly as big as Viacom or AOL Time Warner.
And Sinclair doesn't get involved in the booking and things the way that Hudson at Turner at the time did.
So you had instability in the corporate structure for years. Okay. Well, when did that really started? What, 97? I want to say 97. I was going to pull it up and I didn't have time. I was running a little bit late.
They had instability early on under Bill Watts when he was there. And I mean, there was a lot of issues early on, and then that's why Eric Bischoff ended up being put in the position.
Yeah.
And then things seemed to straighten out. They started getting their ratings up, and then I'd say maybe they had a good year where things seemed to be running smooth before that next merger happened that really messed up the infrastructure of the company again.
So love Bischoff or hate Bischoff, agree with Bischoff, disagree, whatever. One thing you cannot take away from Eric Bischoff is when Ted Turner gave him his proxy, he basically turned the company over to Eric Bischoff and said, run my company.
Yep.
That's really when the ratings and WCW became successful. There was one guy in charge. It was Eric Bischoff. Yep. And that is really what you need to take a wrestling company to the next level. You need a buck stops here guy. Okay. You need somebody making those final calls. Mm-hmm. That way, when you have disagreements, WWE, for better or worse, that's Vince. Like, it's been Vince forever. Vince decides what happens in that company, top to bottom. And as the mergers happened at WCW, and you just go listen to like the guys who were there, and all of them, regardless of what they're saying about who was to blame and who this, the thread that goes without is the progressively disorganized management structure and the progressively worsening ownership structure and disinterest from the ownership group, and the indecision and the bad decisions coming from people who knew nothing about wrestling. That is where WCW became really a wounded animal. It was crippled by that. It could not recover. And it continued to spiral down and down and down and down until you had, 2000, they lost $63 million. And, that was the death knell. It was over at that point. Okay. But a lot of that was just because nobody really knew what they were doing at that point. You had non-wrestling, you had TV people basically just looking for a rating and to save money and wanted programming. They wouldn't let WCW shut down Thunder.
And I mean, you had executives for years in WCW who didn't want the company. Turner executives fought Ted Turner when he bought it, or they wanted it off TV when it was still NWA. They wanted to get rid of the World Championship Wrestling program. Turner buys the company. The board at the time was upset with his purchase of the company. They didn't want it on TV. He restructured, the people under him at that point. We ended up getting Eric Bischoff involved. When we had the Viacom merger, all of a sudden there's a board. They don't want wrestling on the channel again. A lot of the same people were piping up again. And then, of course, with the AOL merger, that's when they, Bischoff and Fuse Media came to them and said, hey, we want to buy the company. There was a deal on the table, and Turner pulled the television away from them while that deal was sitting there, and that killed it for them. So a lot of it was, at the time, the company, the people in charge of the company did not want pro wrestling. It didn't matter about if it mattered less about how much money the company was losing, which it was. And it mattered even less about ratings, because at the time, WCW Nitro was still the #1 rated program on Turner Television. So it didn't have to do with ratings. It had heavily to do with that they did not want that programming on their network.
Yeah, the executives wanted it gone. Yeah. And, WCW would have survived had that not happened. It's that came out, Bischoff and Jarrett and all those guys, they had the money to buy it, but it was contingent on that TV deal. And they couldn't do it without TV. And so Vince bought it for pennies on the dollar, and we wound up where we are today. So you aren't going to have a crazy corporate structure. And I feel like, excuse me a second, Bob.
Yep.
There we go. I had a little sneeze in there. You don't have that crazy corporate culture. You don't have the company trying to physically get rid of the wrestling entity. The owner, and this is another part we need to really talk about, because I've heard Dixie Carter's name get thrown around so much in relation to Tony Khan. Oh, Dixie Carter had lots of money. Dixie Carter threw lots of money at TNA, and look what it did.
Yeah.
All right. Calling Dixie Carter Tony Khan or Tony Khan Dixie Carter is just a fallacy.
Yeah.
Okay. Tony Khan is, first of all, he is a successful, smart businessman.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, his father, very rich, but Tony has his own successful business in its own right. And I know the other thing, he runs the Jaguars and Fulham FC, and they're two of the worst franchises in their leagues. Yeah, Jacksonville's been spotty, but they've only owned Jacksonville for a handful of years, and Fulham definitely needs to up their game, but let's not act like Fulham was knocking down doors before they bought it. But more importantly, his sports analytics company is very successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like the business, very successful. Okay,
and people have to remember, when we start talking sports, a lot of it comes down to how big of an athlete you got. You're able to draft. I mean, look at how terrible the Cleveland Cavaliers have been for pretty much ever since the early 90s, and then except for those years they had LeBron and they were fantastic. So it has to do with if you can get a superstar athlete. And when you look at AEW, they signed like the top 5 free agents this year. So it's pretty good bet. Yeah.
So you have that. He's a successful businessman, and in sports. Okay. This is going to be a sports-driven product. The other thing that Tony Khan is, he is a lifelong, hardcore wrestling fan. This isn't a guy who watches some wrestling and likes it. And that's very much what Ted Turner was. He kind of liked it and liked it as a toy. But he was not a Tony Khan level fan. Very famously, when this first came out, Tony Khan's been an Observer newsletter subscriber since he was 8. Yep. He was a tape trader.
I will give you a fantastic comparison for Tony Khan. Tony Khan is what Paul Heyman would have been if Paul Heyman would have been rich.
Yeah.
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 Yep. I mean, everything Paul did, ECW, the love of pro wrestling, wanting to see, athletic competition, wanting to see something different, wanting an alternative to WWE. That's what we're talking here, except for in this instance, you have a guy who actually got the bankroll to back that up.
Yeah, it's a little different in he has more of a bankroll, and he's not nearly as good of a personality.
Yeah.
He's not going to be, and Tony has said in multiple interviews, he does not intend to be an on-air personality. Mm-hmm. Maybe we see him in a couple of years when there's a feud going on and he needs to come out and play babyface commissioner, babyface owner.
He'd be great, like Gorilla Monsoon used to, that once a year shows up on TV to settle something that can't be settled otherwise. That'd be fine.
And it's him booking a match usually. Yeah. And that's it. That's the only thing he does.
Or
he comes out and like, well, we're gonna it's and Gorilla Monsoon had that role in the 80s and it was great. It was awesome, man. Like
Sean did it for a little bit in the 90s, and it was good because it was a big deal when he was there and showed up.
Yeah. So I mean, but he does not intend to be in the spotlight or on TV. At least that's what he is saying currently. So yeah, you're right, Bob. It is very similar to if Paul Heyman, somebody like him, would have had, billions of dollars. And that's another important point, that people, no matter how many times you say it, they're just brain dead. But it is becoming...
Vince is going to buy up AEW.
Vince is going to buy AEW. He's going to just outspend AEW and crush them because the WWE... All right, guys.
That all depends on how many shows they're doing in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, if they start doing a monthly show for $40 million in Saudi,
live Monday Night Raw from Saudi Arabia every Monday.
We're live in Riyadh. Yeah, it's So unless something like that happens, guys, the Khan family is worth double what Vince is.
Yep. And Vince has a lot of money tied up right now in the XFL as well.
In the XFL.
Yep.
Yeah, but if you just go by net worth, Vince is in the 2s and the Khan family's almost at 5.
Yeah.
All right? Like, they're worth double. They're investing, the initial investment for AEW was $100 million.
$100 million.
True story. Very, very 90s of you, Bob. Yeah. Since we are talking WCW.
Is it an evil wrestling promotion? All I want is Joey Ryan's penis with laser beams attached to its head.
Laser beams. You know what? Again, another way that Joey Ryan might be able to get over in my eyes. All I want is freaking laser beams attached to Joey Ryan's penis. Why can't I have laser beams? Yeah. And as now anybody under the age of like 35 is punched out of the video, they're like, what are these two old guys talking about?
And next week on the Austin Powers podcast. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. This is not, Dixie Carter throwing a few million every couple of years at TNA to keep a floundering business going that she doesn't understand.
Yep. This
is $100 million investment, capital investment. That yes, AEW. If you have to expect you're going to lose money in the first year.
Yeah.
Probably in the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. Right. You kind of got to assume you're going to take a short-term net loss, and Tony Khan has 5-year plan. Like, that's what we keep hearing is 5 years. That's 5-year plan.
Yep.
A lot of the guys are signed to pretty long-term deals, relatively speaking. So they've got some stability. They're very good contracts. They're not going to have as heavy of a work schedule as the WWE. That's another thing that AEW is going. At least on the outside looking in, it looks like they're not going to be working their wrestlers as much, so there'll be less of chance for an injury.
Yeah, we haven't even heard about them doing like a house show type situation. We've heard no mention of any kind of house show yet. So I mean, we don't even know if they're going to run such a thing. Like they might just do their weekly TV and monthly pay-per-view type situation and not even do house shows. I mean, we really don't have an idea because none of that stuff's really been announced yet.
Right, and that's probably not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because, one of the issues that WCW also had was their house shows just weren't drawing.
And WWE's having that problem now. TNA had that problem when they were running house shows. Yep.
Another thing that AEW doesn't face that more so WCW, but TNA also faces. WWE is, at a historic low in popularity.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about that with the ratings, but they haven't been this bad since 95. What happened?
Yep.
Yeah, WCW started winning.
Yeah.
But then WWE put their game face on and they really upped their level, and you got the Attitude Era.
They started making changes and started letting wrestlers do different things,
Yes. and which is good for the business in general. But really, was there much of a difference between? But let's be honest. Other than like the storylines and what was happening in the amount of watchability in the ring, and the promos and the quality, what was the difference between WCW and WWF at the time?
The cruiserweight division.
That was it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, it was WCW had a very athletic undercard with really really talented matches that didn't really need a lot of crazy gimmicks. I mean, you did have Mexican luchadors, so they obviously they're masked and whatnot. But in comparison, WWE and their undercard had porn stars, and they had Chainsaw Charlie, things like that. They had some more gimmicks still going on in that Attitude Era on the undercard, where WCW just tended to focus directly on the athleticism of their cruiserweight division in the undercard.
But the presentation was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
There was no real. I mean, the formats were a touch different.
Yep.
WWE. That's when. The Attitude Era, that's when the format that we have now started, where you got the long intro promo. Mm-hmm. You could do that when the person giving that intro promo was Stone Cold.
Well, and I mean, we have to remember at that time you had that it was just the starting of blurring the reality with kayfabe. So you'd have a live in-ring segment going on where someone would be talking, and then they'd, in the middle of their talk, have to cut sometimes backstage to like a beatdown going on, or you'd have the corporation in the middle of the ring and Vince McMahon giving a long, drawn-out promo, and then get interrupted by Stone Cold Steve Austin in a beer truck, and it was the first time you ever seen that done. There wasn't a format. You haven't seen this a million times before and knew what to expect. It was new and exciting, so you get away with it. Now you throw them in the ring for a contract signing, and people are taking over-unders online as how soon the table's going to get flipped. I mean, We know what's coming.
It's the same thing. It's like I said in the show a couple of nights ago. We've had the same format for 20 years on Raw. Yep. It's the same format, and this is when it started, and it was new and exciting. But WWE failed to evolve. Now, when you talk TNA and why AEW is not TNA, we don't know. Like this part, we don't know. But every indication is we're not going to get this. Impact tried to do what WWE was doing.
Yeah,
they did a little different.
Let's start. We're talking about so far with WCW. We've been talking about WCW when they were the #1 company, right? We were talking about WCW when they were topping the ratings. Let's take a second to think about, this is AEW. They're a brand new company. They're going to have their first show next week. Let's take a look at WCW and TNA when they were new companies. And that'll show you the real reason why. I mean, you look at WCW, we mentioned, came out of NWA, Crockett Promotions, and was purchased by Turner. They had a roster already built. The people who watched the programming already were already familiar with it, and there were expectations to kind of go along with what they had. And until somebody came in like an Eric Bischoff to change things, you didn't really see a whole lot of growth within it. With TNA, they started out as a brand new company, much like AEW is, but they pulled a large amount of their roster from NWA Wildside and Ring of Honor. They had the NWA belts. They kind of tried positioning themselves as the new coming of something that already existed, like the new version of NWA. And they were doing month or weekly pay-per-views. They didn't have a TV deal. There's a whole lot of difference to what TNA had when it started as a company to what AEW has. AEW is far and beyond where TNA was when they started. It took TNA a number of years. Even their first TV deal was an afternoon deal on Fox Sports Net during the middle of the week.
Let's talk about when they did step it up, because that's, I think, what people are making the comparison. They look at an Impact really, TNA Impact really was WCW 2.0.
Yeah.
It was all the WCW guys. and they just kind of cycled through all the WCW guys.
Well, I mean, they did that thing WCW did where even though they had their own guys, I mean, they had AJ, they had Samoa Joe, they had Team Canada with Eric Young and Bobby Roode. They had America's Most Wanted. They had Christopher Daniels. They had a lot of guys who now are big name stars who they were, kind of starting their company off with. As soon as they got to that point where they had that Spike TV deal, then they brought in guys like Kurt Angle. They brought in Booker T. They brought in Hulk Hogan and Bischoff. And you've seen that we're bringing in a bunch of guys from WCW and WWE and putting the belt on them and making them our top guys. And you definitely did see that. I don't foresee that happening with AEW, however.
Right. And another point is they weren't just, copying, let's bring in these guys that everybody's familiar with. They tried to basically recapture or, recreate various gimmicks and factions.
Well, you had the band. Remember the band?
Well, I mean,
Hall Nash, X-Pac, NWO knockoff.
Right. Yeah. Well, look at Aces and Eights, which was basically NWA. The NWO rebooted in a biker angle.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's all it was. It was they were trying to recapture. They were trying to recapture the feeling that the NWO created, except as like a biker gang.
And and who could forget the legendary Fortune 4.
Yeah, really. Like, I mean, it was basically just cheap knockoff gimmicks. I mean, and I hate to say it, like I love two of the guys. Like, I love Bobby Roode and I love James Storm, but Beer Money was just an APA knockoff.
Sure was.
Like, I mean,
though when it was James Storm and Wildcat Chris Harris, that was a solid tag team. And
I'm not saying they were bad. Yeah. I'm saying, but like the actual, like what you were seeing, it was just like a poor man's version of what you had already seen for 10 years.
Yeah,
and that's again, every indication is we're not going to get that. You don't have this glut of WWE guys in AEW right now. There are some.
I mean, even so let's play devil advocate here. Even if everything a lot of people are saying, about who they're going to sign is true. Let's say they sign Ty Dillinger, they get Dean Ambrose, and then when contracts come up, they sign the Revival and they sign Sasha Banks. Let's say that happens. That's a far cry from TNA bringing in Ric Flair and him barely, able to even wrestle, and bringing in Hogan where he can't wrestle and giving him like massive amounts of TV time. Like that's a far cry. You're bringing in people who are still in their prime. And if they don't position them in a title picture right away, they are talking about analytics and about, wins and losses mattering. They won't be immediately thrown into a title picture, which means you'll get to see these guys come up through the ranks. And then that's a completely different story than how TNA did it.
Yeah, and you're going to have some of that crossover, and you're going to see big names come over, but you bring them, if you bring them in and present them as, hey, I'm here now, and I'm going to, I'm here to kick ass and take names, and they start at the bottom, and they climb up that ladder, and they go on, a 10 or 12 match win streak, and then they're, getting into the title hunt. It validates them, right? Like,
and I'm not the first one to say this, but one of the problems TNA had is, they'd bring in guys who weren't top guys in WWE, guys like Christian, Booker T, and Rob Van Dam, who had, flirted with titles or had the title one time or so, and then put them in like main event feuds and put the belts on them multiple times. And when you do that, you're telling your fans, hey, here's a guy who you've seen for years not be able to get it done in WWE, but they're able to beat all our guys, and you're basically saying, hey, our talent isn't as good as what WWE has. And in this situation, if they do bring people in and have them build up from the bottom, you're showing that these guys, one, want to be there, and then two, are willing to work for that opportunity.
And you don't even have to build from, like, let's say they bring in a mid-carder, okay? Like, here, let's use a good example. Wade Barrett, right?
Right.
Wade Barrett signed AEW. What is it, Stu Barrett or something now?
Stu Bennett.
Stu Bennett.
Yeah.
So the names, I have to relearn all the names. So he's a guy, he had some injury problems, but he was very good, and he got very, very over in the WWE, right?
Yep.
If you start him as one of your consistent mid-card guys in AEW, because he's got a lot of TV experience and he seems to know what he's doing, and if he could stay healthy, and you have him work the mid-card for 18 months, and you put together a nice winning streak and have him win a mid-level championship, you can pitch it as, hey, look at, he's growing, he's getting better and better, and he wasn't a slouch. Until they really, towards the end, they jobbed him out, he wasn't a slouch in WWE. He had some really, he had some heat and had a good gimmick, and you can do it that way. You can bring a guy who was in the mid card in the WWE, and you can bring him to your mid card in AEW, and then build them from there. Yeah. They don't have to start at the absolute bottom every time, but you do, if you make that switch, you have to put them commensurately in your promotion. So if they were a mid-card guy, they got to come to the mid-card in your promotion.
Yeah.
You can't have an R-Truth come over and be your champion right out the gate. The only exceptions to that are truly elite level guys with multiple titles. If Jon Moxley shows up like everyone expects him to, he's automatically a main event guy.
Yeah. I can even see, if somebody like EC3 came in, even though WWE's completely misused him and made him look like garbage, if they brought him in, I could see him being in the main event scene sooner than somebody who spent a long time in WWE as a mid-carder, because he did have those run in TNA.
Well, the way you do that, Bob, just real quick, the way you do that is you bring him in, right? And you give him, because the other thing that is really going around is the no scripted promos, right? Yeah. If they're going back to the old bullet point style, we're going to give you 3-4 points. We need you to make these points. Go cut your promo. Yep. And that's great, because that's when you really tap into what a character's about, and they can be authentic and just go cut a promo. And if they can't, they're completely incapable of cutting a promo, maybe they'll bring back managers. Please, I miss managers. Anyway, just to reboot EC3. It's such a simple reboot, right? This guy was, multiple time champion in Impact. So he goes to WWE and does horribly, right? Leaves WWE. Let's say he comes to AEW. You sign him into AEW. You bring him into the mid card, and you have him squash 3 or 4 of your better mid carders right away, and cut a promo and be like, "Yeah, the problem wasn't me. The problem was that sports entertainment crap.
Yeah,
I'm an athlete, and I'm here to be an athlete, and I'm going to take down anybody I have to get to that title." And then you just have him kind of slide right into the mid card in 6 weeks, or from the mid card to the main event, the lower main event, in 4 to 6 weeks, and you've got him there, and nobody's really going to bat an eye, because you threw shade at WWE, and people are going to love that, right? And he has a pedigree. He has championships, and not like indie, IWWL PJW champion. Like Impact is still Impact and Ring of Honor, and more so New Japan. Like New Japan, if you're talking about prestige, WWE championships are going to mean the most, just because we're in America. But the IWGP championship, because WWE has pimped that, with Brock Lesnar being a former champ, and that does mean a lot.
Yeah.
So that's probably number 2, and then Ring of Honor and Impact, or a coin flip, those championships very much matter. And if somebody's a multiple time world champion at one of those promotions, they can come in and do a brief stint in your mid card and slide right up, unless they've just been completely thrashed by the WWE. Then you have to, you do have to do a little reset. There has to be a short term, but EC3 is a great example. A lot of the stuff that he's doing right now, a lot of people aren't seeing it because it's not even on Raw or SmackDown. Mm-hmm. It's on Superstars and Main Event. Yeah. And so nobody really sees it. So if he comes in and he lays waste to 4 or 5 mid-carders and cuts a promo like that and says, yeah, the problem, here I can shine. I can be myself. I can be the supreme athlete and the 1%er I am. He's always kind of used that gimmick, but I'm elite. I'm better than you, and you've got a built-in top heel for your company, and he's got that look. And I know there's a lot of people. I got into a couple arguments. People like, oh, EC3 sucks. I'm like, well, he's not AJ in the ring, but he's got a great look, and I've heard him cut some great promos, and I've seen him work really good matches.
Those are the same people who don't like Bobby Lashley and are like, oh, he's terrible. And I'm like, man, Bobby Lashley was really good when he was allowed to just be a badass in TNA and just beat people up.
Yeah, Lashley was a beast in Impact. He was he was great, and we're gonna get to see more of that. We're gonna get to see people pitch their character the way they want it, and of course there's going to be some booking decisions. Not everybody can win. There's going to be some guys that are going to have to do some jobs, but my guess is that you're going to see a lot of the young guys doing favors for the guys in the main event, and you're going to see enhancement matches, and you're going to see stuff that we haven't seen in a while, because otherwise how do you string together win streaks without killing your top guys?
And it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this works with the partnerships with some of these other companies in working indie scenes and things. Because from the sound of it, they're letting their employees, the wrestlers, go out and work indie dates still, and we'll have to see how long that lasts. But that's a great way to build somebody too. Have somebody show up on the indie scene and get a big win or win a championship from an indie promotion, and show up on TV with a championship win. One of your lower mid card guys having won a championship somewhere. That immediately helps give credibility to them as well on TV. So
and it boosts the indie. You've got your championship on a TV screen.
Yep.
On a national TV program. That's not a bad, as long as AEW is willing to be like, and he won the whatever promotion championship. Yep. And give it some pub.
And it looks like they are. They are. The Bucks are defending the AAA tag titles at Double or Nothing. So it looks like they're willing to do that, at least with certain partners. So
the one last grain of salt I have is, guys, don't take what we see at Double or Nothing as what we're going to see as the final TV product.
Yep.
I think it's going to be closer. A couple of things that AEW does need to do that they may struggle at, and these are valid points and fair points that I've seen made. They have to get better at their production. All In was good. It was not great.
They need to mic the crowd.
Yes, miking the crowd is going to be super important. Timing, we remember what happened, and I'm not sure who was at fault. People came out and said, this one was at fault. You had those matches go over, and the main event was super short, and they got to get better at their timing. And that is a lack of TV experience,
which hopefully will be helped by bringing in guys who've worked in the production side of things. Their coaches like Billy Gunn and Jerry Lynn and etc., who are now backstage, who can help keep them on time with these matches.
Another one I would look, I think they're going to be leaning heavily on JR and his experience, but they've got to get better at production. They have to up their production game, and that is probably more so than what I see in the ring, more so than the actual outcomes of the matches. When I watch Double or Nothing, the thing I'm going to be paying attention to the most is how far the production has come since All In. Because if it is just a couple of small steps, I think we need to really reevaluate what's going on, because that would be scary. And that is where they could flounder, because this is going to be on TNT, and fans are used to seeing a WWE level, like in terms of lighting and video quality and of all the things that WWE does wrong. Okay. One of the things that they typically do right is their TV production. Like old Kevin Dunn's getting a little crazy with his camera shots. Like when he's choosing to go to the crowd and anytime Kevin Dunn's mentioned, all I can think of is the Jim Cornette Bucky Beaver impression. But he has gotten a little, I don't understand some of their cutaways, and I don't like the formatting, like when they go to commercials. But I'm talking about like the video quality. You don't usually have like downed feeds. You don't lose audio. That's an extreme rarity with a WWE product, right?
On television.
On TV, like on TV, like you hardly ever lose. They lose, like they have gotten that down to a science, but they've been doing it, they've been doing it forever. Forever. But you have to present, especially you're pitching this as an authentic sports type product. People are used to seeing NBA, the NFL, UFC, boxing, baseball, all incredibly good at presenting their product in an appropriate way. And the cutaways and the graphics and things like that, like they have to come with this has to be A level. It cannot, no offense to Ring of Honor, no offense to Impact, it cannot be at that level. It can't, because if that's where they start, it's an instant, it's an instant knock on the product. They have to stay a game. You
and I privately talked about some things that I've noticed at Ring of Honor shows that I've been to in the past couple months that I was like, man, they need to do this better. This is why they're not on the same level as WWE. And, the AEW is going to be in that same situation. They're going to have to make sure that they are appearing to be the same level as far as production value and professionalism. Because when somebody looks at a televised product, if it looks less professional than the competition, that hurts, and that'll hurt their ratings.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot. And to be fair, if you go back and you look at the AEW announcement in Jacksonville, and then the following, like the press conferences and stuff that followed that, every single one of them improved.
Yes.
Everyone got better, which is a great sign. I love to see that. And, but I need to see that between All In and Double or Nothing, and then I really need to see another significant jump when we get to the next big show.
I mean, the production team for Double or Nothing is going to be drastically different than what it was for All In. I mean, because most of what the production team for All In was coming out of Ring of Honor. So, that kind of makes sense. And Ring of Honor, usually running smaller venues, was used to, miking up smaller venues. So I think, with them planning to run bigger venues, I would assume they're gonna mic the crowd. I'm gonna assume that we're gonna see a lot of differences and improvement from where they were. And then this summer, man, they got the Jacksonville show. They have they're doing a show with CEO Video Game Expo again, so that they'll have a chance to do production. And then I believe they're the rumor of a UK tour and a show in Chicago over the summer before they start TV. So it looks like they're going to have a good 4 or 5 chances to work on their production and continue to improve before television hits.
CM Punk.
Sit down, Mark.
Well, and guys, I'm not saying that AEW is guaranteed to succeed, but any business can fail.
Yeah.
But to say that this is WCW or TNA is just disingenuous. If you're looking at it like that, there's just too many differences. You can't say that. It just doesn't make sense. If you really believe that, I encourage you, you've heard us lay out our case. Go look at the facts a little bit deeper. Avoid the clickbait headlines. Actually peel back. Go listen to what the Bucks and Jericho and Cody and Brandy, and more importantly, Tony Khan. There are half a dozen shoot interviews with Tony, like long interviews, hour plus, where he talks in great detail about the type of wrestling he likes, where he's coming from as a fan, and what he wants to accomplish. And it's like if one of us were running a promotion and had $100 million invested into it. Yeah. So that's really exciting.
Yep.
So,
and
Bob,
let's leave everybody with this concept too. You mentioned Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was in ECW, and he was in WCW, and he was in WWE. He's been in ECW during times where some people weren't getting paid. He was in WCW during a time when sometimes the booking wasn't so good, and people didn't know what was going on due to the structure within the company. And then he's been in WWE, and I don't believe for a minute that if Chris Jericho believed AEW was going to run like WCW or TNA, that he would have signed to be part of that company. So we got to take that into account too, that this is somebody who's been through, World Championship Wrestling, something that everybody's comparing AEW to. And he was miserable there and left for a reason. So I don't see him signing with a place like AEW if he suspects for a minute that they're going to be doing things the same way WCW did. Yeah.
And he is very excited to be there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one thing he is detailed a lot. He turned down, he could have went back to WWE. Vince wanted him. He just didn't match the offer. And Jericho was like, okay, I'm gonna go take a chance because this looks good. So, Bob, I think that's about it. I'm ready to I am ready to tap out.
Yeah, it is a bit late, and we got this weekend we got Money in the Bank, which is no one's gonna watch because of Game of Thrones. And then we're on the road to Double or Nothing and Starrcast weekend. So we're gonna have to shoot coverage for that, and busy week next week. So
yeah, and we didn't even really hit on any other news. There was a lot of breaking news today. Ric Flair get better soon. I'm glad that TMZ's report was a bunch of crap, and that Rick, if you didn't see, just real quick, Rick, it was reported he had a serious medical condition, was rushed to the hospital. That was clarified. No, he went in to have a planned surgical procedure and is doing just fine. Is what was reported.
Did you catch the Ashley Mazzaro news?
I did. We did lose her. We didn't even talk about Silver King. We've missed quite a bit of we've still got a ton to cover in the next show that we do, plus all the AEW and Starrcast news. But on a Game of Thrones note, and Ric Flair, what do we say? What do we say to death, the God of Death? And it's not today. Rick, feel better.
Not today. Woo!
Yeah, not today. Woo! Rick, please. Feel better, and we hope he's on his feet, and we're really sorry about a lot of the wrestling losses we've seen recently, but it is an exciting time to be a wrestling fan for sure. So, Brother Bob, why don't you go ahead and GTS that bell?
Well, as soon as we let them know that we would love it if they would our audience would like, subscribe, and super kick the bell button for us. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, here on YouTube, and on Twitch. And thank you for joining us. And I'm about to V-trigger this out button.
You're about to V-trigger?
V-trigger!